When we talk about emotional detachment, we're not talking about shutting down or becoming cold and indifferent. Emotional detachment is not about cutting yourself off from feeling. It's about creating space to prioritize your well-being and understand the boundaries that keep you emotionally balanced. Relationships, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, hold immense power over our lives. They shape our experiences and often define how we view ourselves. But when the relationship begins to harm your sense of self, when it leaves you questioning your worth or robs you of peace, it becomes essential to learn the art of stepping back emotionally. The challenge is that emotional bonds are not logical, they are deeply human. You may know intellectually that the relationship is no longer healthy, yet your emotions resist that logic. You stay attached because of comfort, fear of the unknown, or a sense of duty. The truth is, emotional detachment isn't just an act of letting go. It's an act of rediscovering who you are when you're not defined by that connection. Detachment begins with understanding that people are complex, unpredictable, and sometimes not aligned with what we need to grow. It's recognizing that someone else's behavior, words, or choices are not a reflection of your value. When you tie your identity to someone else's opinion or presence, you hand them the keys to your emotional world. You allow them to dictate your happiness, your confidence, and your stability. The first step toward detachment is reclaiming those keys and reminding yourself that your worth is not up for negotiation. This process starts by shifting focus. Instead of pouring your energy into what they're doing, how they're feeling, or why things turned out a certain way, turn that energy inward. Ask yourself, who am I without this relationship? What do I need to feel whole again? These questions are not easy to answer, especially when your identity has become entangled with theirs. But they are necessary. They force you to confront the uncomfortable truth that detachment isn't just about removing someone else, it's about rediscovering yourself. Another important aspect of emotional detachment is acceptance. We often stay emotionally hooked to people because we're waiting for them to change, to apologize, or to validate our pain. We replay scenarios in our minds, wondering how things could have gone differently. But the reality is that waiting for someone else to act in a way that aligns with your expectations is a losing game. Acceptance doesn't mean you're okay with what happened. It means you acknowledge it as reality. When you stop resisting what is and start accepting it, you free yourself from the weight of unmet expectations. Detachment also requires setting boundaries. Boundaries are not walls meant to shut people out. They're guardrails that protect your emotional landscape. They allow you to say, this is where I end and you begin. Setting boundaries is not selfish, it's essential. When you establish what you will and won't tolerate, you create space for peace to return to your life. It may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to prioritizing others over yourself, but boundaries are an act of self-respect, and they communicate to others how you expect to be treated. Another vital part of this process is letting go of guilt. Detaching from someone does not mean you don't care about them. It doesn't make you a bad person. It simply means you're choosing to care for yourself as well. Many of us carry guilt because we've been conditioned to believe that love means sacrifice at all costs. But love that requires you to lose yourself is not love, it's dependency. By releasing guilt, you allow yourself the freedom to choose relationships that uplift rather than deplete you. Time is another crucial element of emotional detachment. Healing doesn't happen overnight. You can't rush the process of untangling your emotions, nor should you. Be patient with yourself. Understand that progress often feels like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. There will be moments when the pull of the past feels strong, when memories resurface and emotions threaten to overwhelm you. In those moments, remind yourself why you're detaching. Remind yourself of the peace you're working toward and the life you want to create. Part of this journey is learning to fill the void that detachment creates. When you let go of someone emotionally, it can feel like a piece of you is missing. That space is not meant to remain empty. It's an invitation to fill it with things that bring you joy and fulfillment. Reconnect with hobbies you've neglected. Spend time with people who genuinely support and uplift you. Invest in your growth, whether through learning, traveling, or simply spending time in solitude. The more you pour into yourself, the less you'll feel the need to rely on someone else to fill that space. Forgiveness plays a critical role in detachment as well. Forgiveness is not about excusing someone's behavior or pretending the pain didn't happen. It's about releasing yourself from the grip of resentment. When you hold on to anger or bitterness, you remain tethered to the very person you're trying to detach from. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to them, it's a gift you give to yourself. It's the act of saying, I refuse to let this pain define me. Self-compassion is equally important. Detaching from someone is hard, and it's okay to feel a mix of emotions: grief, relief, anger, sadness, and even guilt. Allow yourself to feel these emotions without judgment. They are part of the process, and suppressing them will only prolong your healing. Treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend going through a similar situation. Remind yourself that you're doing the best you can, and that's enough. As you move through this journey, you'll start to notice shifts within yourself. You'll feel lighter, more at peace, and more grounded in who you are. The beauty of emotional detachment is that it doesn't just free you from the pain of a specific relationship, it empowers you to approach all your relationships differently. You'll begin to understand that healthy connections are built on mutual respect, understanding, and a balance of give and take. You'll stop clinging to people out of fear and start choosing relationships that align with your values and aspirations. Emotional detachment is not about walking away from someone. It's about walking toward yourself. It's about reclaiming your emotional freedom and learning to stand firmly in your own truth. It's about recognizing that your peace, happiness, and self-worth are not dependent on anyone else. They come from within. And when you reach that place of emotional independence, you'll find that you're not just surviving, you're thriving. Emotional detachment is a profound and ongoing journey of self-awareness, one that teaches us how to navigate the complexities of human connection without losing ourselves in the process. As you grow into this practice, you'll notice that the process isn't linear. There will be times when old habits and attachments resurface, and you might find yourself slipping back into patterns of overinvestment or self-doubt. These moments are not failures, but opportunities to deepen your commitment to the practice of detachment. One of the most overlooked aspects of emotional detachment is the power of mindfulness. To detach is not to disengage from the world or become indifferent to people around you. It's about being present enough to observe your emotions without becoming consumed by them. Mindfulness teaches you to notice when your mind begins to spiral into overthinking, or when emotions like guilt, fear, or anger start to take hold. By grounding yourself in the present, you can remind yourself that feelings are temporary states, not permanent truths. The more you practice mindfulness, the more you'll discover that emotional detachment isn't about erasing your feelings. It's about learning to respond to them with intention rather than reacting out of habit. In practicing detachment, it's important to recognize the stories you tell yourself about the relationship. Often we stay tethered to someone, not because of who they are in reality, but because of who we've made them out to be in our minds. Maybe you've created a narrative where they're your source of happiness, your safety net, or the key to your future. These stories can feel incredibly real, but they are, at their core, illusions. To detach, you must dismantle these narratives and confront the truth. No one person holds the power to complete you. This can be a painful realization, but it's also liberating because it puts the power back in your hands. Another part of emotional detachment is learning to separate love from attachment. Love is a pure and selfless force, while attachment often stems from fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of being alone. When we confuse the two, we start to believe that clinging to someone is an expression of love, when in reality it's a manifestation of our insecurities. True love allows freedom. It allows space for both people to grow as individuals, without one person being dependent on the other for their sense of identity or self-worth. When you detach emotionally, you give yourself the chance to experience love in its truest form without the chains of neediness or dependency. Forging a new sense of identity is a crucial aspect of emotional detachment. Many of us invest so much of ourselves in our relationships that we begin to lose sight of who we are outside of them. We define ourselves by the roles we play, partner, friend, sibling, and forget that we are whole beings apart from those roles. Detachment requires you to reconnect with the parts of yourself that may have been neglected or overshadowed. What are your passions? What are your dreams? What makes you feel alive? By rediscovering these aspects of yourself, you begin to build a life that feels fulfilling and meaningful, independent of anyone else. Another powerful tool in emotional detachment is self-reflection. Take the time to examine the patterns in your relationships. Are there recurring themes or behaviors that keep showing up? Do you find yourself drawn to people who are emotionally unavailable, or do you tend to overextend yourself in an effort to be needed? By understanding these patterns, you can begin to break free from them. Self-reflection is not about blaming yourself for past mistakes. It's about learning from them so that you can move forward with greater clarity and intention. One of the most difficult aspects of detachment is dealing with the void that often follows. When you remove someone from your emotional landscape, it can feel as though a part of you has been taken away. This void can be unsettling, but it's also an opportunity. A blank canvas on which you can create something new, fill that space with experiences that bring you joy, with people who uplift you, and with pursuits that align with your values. Your move to take this bank account away. The more you invest in your own life, the less you'll feel the need to rely on someone else to fill the gaps. Emotional detachment also requires a willingness to embrace uncertainty. We often stay attached to people because they represent a sense of stability or predictability, even if the relationship is no longer healthy. Letting go means stepping into the unknown, and that can be terrifying. But it's in the unknown that growth happens. It's where you discover your resilience, your adaptability, and your capacity to create a life that aligns with your true self. The discomfort of uncertainty is temporary, but the rewards of embracing it are lasting. In learning to detach, you'll also come to appreciate the importance of gratitude. It might sound counterintuitive to feel grateful in the midst of letting go, but gratitude shifts your perspective. Instead of focusing on what you've lost, you can focus on what the experience has taught you. Every relationship, even the painful ones, carries lessons. Perhaps by recognizing these lessons, you can begin to see the relationship as a stepping stone on your journey, rather than as a source of regret or bitterness. As you move further along this path, you'll notice that detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. On the contrary, it allows you to care in a healthier, more balanced way. You can still wish someone well without feeling the need to fix them or save them. You can still hold space for their humanity without sacrificing your own. Detachment doesn't close your heart, it frees it. It allows you to love without losing yourself, to give without depleting yourself, and to connect without clinging. There's also a profound sense of empowerment that comes with emotional detachment. When you learn to regulate your emotions and set boundaries, you take back control of your life. You no longer feel at the mercy of someone else's actions or words. You become the author of your own story rather than a character in someone else's. This empowerment doesn't happen overnight, but with each small step you take, you'll feel a growing sense of confidence in your ability to navigate relationships with grace and integrity. And the practice of detachment extends beyond individual relationships. It can transform how you approach life as a whole. You begin to understand that everything in life is temporary. Relationships, circumstances, emotions. This awareness doesn't make life less meaningful, it makes it more precious. You learn to appreciate the present moment for what it is, without clinging to it or fearing its end. Detachment teaches you to hold life lightly, to embrace its ebb and flow with a sense of curiosity and openness. As you continue to grow in your ability to detach, you'll find that it's not about shutting people out, it's about letting the right people in. When you're no longer driven by fear or neediness, you attract relationships that are rooted in mutual respect and authenticity. You're able to show up as your whole self, and you invite others to do the same. This creates a foundation for connections that are truly fulfilling and sustainable. Ultimately, emotional detachment is a journey back to yourself. It's a process of unlearning the patterns that no longer serve you, of reclaiming your power, and of creating a life that feels aligned with who you are at your core. It's about realizing that you are enough, just as you are, and that your happiness is not dependent on anyone else. When you reach this place, you'll find that letting go isn't an act of loss. It's an act of liberation. It's a reminder that you are whole, worthy, and capable of creating a life filled with peace, purpose, and joy. Emotional detachment is a practice that deepens over time. It's not something you achieve in a single moment of clarity, but rather a process of repeated effort, self-reflection, and growth. Each day offers new opportunities to reinforce your sense of self and separate your identity from the weight of a particular connection. What makes this journey so significant is that it reshapes not only how you interact with others, but also how you interact with yourself. At the core of emotional detachment is self-respect. Respecting yourself means honoring your boundaries, valuing your time, and protecting your peace. It means choosing not to engage in situations or relationships that undermine your sense of worth. For many people, this concept is a revelation because we've been conditioned to believe that prioritizing others at all costs is a sign of kindness. But there's a fine line between kindness and self-sacrifice, and detachment helps you draw that line more clearly. When you respect yourself, you teach others how to treat you, and you create a foundation for healthier relationships moving forward. It's also important to acknowledge that detaching from someone doesn't erase the love or care you felt for them. Those emotions are real and valid, and they don't simply disappear because you've chosen to step back. Detachment doesn't invalidate your feelings, it reframes them. You can still honor the role that person played in your life without allowing their presence or absence to define your future. This distinction is crucial because it allows you to let go without bitterness. Instead of seeing detachment as a rejection of the relationship, you can view it as a necessary act of self-preservation. The process of detachment can feel isolating at times, especially if the person you're stepping back from has been a significant part of your daily life. In these moments, it's essential to build a support system. Surround yourself with people who uplift and encourage you, who remind you of your strength and value. Lean on friends, family, or even professional counselors who can help you process your emotions and navigate the complexities of letting go. When times get tough, if you lean on others for support, it will help you to let go together with the group. You don't have to go through this journey alone, and seeking support is a sign of strength, not weakness. Another key element of detachment is understanding that closure is not always something you receive from others. Sometimes it's something you have to create for yourself. We often stay emotionally tied to people because we're waiting for answers, apologies, or explanations that may never come. But placing your healing in someone else's hands only prolongs your pain. Closure doesn't come from their words or actions. It comes from your decision to accept what is and move forward. It's an act of reclaiming your power and choosing to no longer let someone else's choices dictate your emotional state. As you detach, you'll also begin to notice the stories you've told yourself about the relationship. Maybe you've convinced yourself that you're responsible for their happiness, or that they're the only person who truly understands you. These stories, though they may feel true, are often rooted in fear rather than reality. By challenging these narratives, you can begin to see the relationship for what it is, rather than what you wish it to be. This clarity is a gift, because it allows you to release the illusions that keep you tethered and embrace the freedom that comes with acceptance. Time is one of the most powerful allies in the process of detachment. In the beginning, the pain of letting go may feel overwhelming. But as the days, weeks, and months pass, you'll find that the intensity of those emotions begins to fade. Healing happens in small, almost imperceptible steps. One day, you'll realize that you went an hour without thinking about them, then a day, then a week. These moments of progress may seem insignificant at first, but they're evidence of your resilience and strength. Trust the process and give yourself the time you need to heal. In the midst of this journey, it's important to practice self-compassion. Letting go is hard, and it's natural to feel a range of emotions, from sadness to anger to relief. Allow yourself to feel these emotions without judgment. They are a part of the healing process, and suppressing them will only prolong your pain. Be kind to yourself as you navigate this transition. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small, and remind yourself that healing is not a linear path. There will be setbacks, but they don't erase the progress you've made. Detachment also teaches you to embrace the concept of impermanence. Everything in life is temporary: relationships, experiences, emotions. This understanding doesn't make life less meaningful, it makes it more precious. When you accept that nothing lasts forever, you can appreciate the present moment for what it is without clinging to it or fearing its end. This mindset allows you to approach life with a sense of openness and curiosity rather than fear and resistance. It helps you understand that letting go is not an end, it's a beginning. As you grow in your ability to detach, you'll find that it transforms not just your relationships, but your entire perspective on life. You'll begin to see that your happiness and fulfillment are not tied to external circumstances or other people. They come from within. This shift in perspective is empowering because it reminds you that you have the ability to create a life that feels authentic and meaningful, regardless of who is or isn't in it. One of the greatest gifts of detachment is the freedom it brings. When you're no longer emotionally tied to someone, you're free to focus on your own growth and happiness. You can invest your energy in the things that truly matter to you, whether that's your career, your passions, your relationships, or your personal development. This freedom allows you to create a life that feels aligned with your values and aspirations. In the end, emotional detachment is about reclaiming your power. It's about recognizing that you are whole and complete on your own, that your worth is not dependent on anyone else, and that your happiness is within your control. It's a journey of self-discovery, self-respect, and self-love. And while it may be challenging at times, it's a journey that will ultimately lead you to a place of peace, strength, and fulfillment. Emotional detachment is not about severing your humanity, it's about rediscovering it in a healthier and more sustainable way. Often, we're so entangled in the idea that caring deeply requires sacrifice that we lose sight of balance. The truth is, caring for someone doesn't have to mean abandoning yourself. It's possible to offer support, to be present, and to love with an open heart without becoming overwhelmed by the emotions, needs, or expectations of another person. But to do so, you must cultivate a deep understanding of where your responsibilities end and theirs begin. Many of us grow up believing that love is transactional. We pour ourselves into someone else, hoping that in return we'll receive validation, love, or security. This mindset leads to an unspoken pressure within relationships, where one or both parties begin to expect their emotional needs to be fulfilled entirely by the other. Over time, this dynamic becomes unsustainable, as no one person can carry the weight of another's happiness indefinitely. Emotional detachment is what breaks this cycle. It teaches you that while love and connection are vital, your emotional well-being cannot hinge solely on the actions or presence of someone else. Detachment also fosters emotional resilience, a quality that becomes a cornerstone of personal growth. Resilience allows you to confront challenges, heartaches, and setbacks with a sense of strength rather than despair. It's not about suppressing your feelings, but about recognizing that they don't have to define you. When someone lets you down, when a relationship falters, or when things don't go as planned, resilience is what enables you to maintain your balance and push forward. This is a fantastic propaganda, if you will. So, detachment feeds resilience by reducing your dependence on external validation, helping you find stability within yourself instead. This internal stability begins with understanding the difference between control and influence. So much of our emotional turmoil arises from trying to control things that are fundamentally beyond our reach. how others feel about us, how they behave, or what they choose to do with their lives. The reality is that you can only ever influence, not control, someone else's choices. And often, the most powerful influence you can have is simply to lead by example, by living authentically, respecting your boundaries, and practicing kindness without expectation. Detachment also allows you to experience clarity. When you're deeply attached to someone, your emotions can cloud your judgment, making it difficult to discern what's truly best for you. You might find yourself excusing behavior that goes against your values or holding on to hope in situations that are unlikely to change. Emotional detachment cuts through that fog. It encourages you to look at situations objectively, to see people for who they are, and to make decisions that align with your well-being rather than your fears. This clarity isn't always comfortable, but it's essential for making choices that serve your highest good. Another aspect of detachment that often goes unnoticed is the way it restores your sense of agency. When you're overly attached to someone, it's easy to fall into patterns of passivity, waiting for them to change or for circumstances to improve. Detachment breaks this pattern by shifting your focus back to what you can do, what you can control, and how you can shape your own life. It's a reminder that you are not a bystander in your own story, you are its author. And one of the most profound realizations you'll have as you detach is that it's not about erasing the connection you once had with someone, it's about transforming it. You begin to understand that just because a relationship doesn't serve you in the way it once did doesn't mean it was without value. Every person who enters your life brings lessons, challenges, and growth opportunities. Detachment allows you to honor those experiences without being bound by them. It's about appreciating the past while making room for the future. The act of letting go often feels like losing something, but in reality, it's a process of gaining. You gain clarity, peace, and the freedom to move forward unencumbered. You gain the ability to invest in relationships that align with your values and aspirations. And most importantly, you gain a deeper connection with yourself. For many, this is the most unexpected yet rewarding outcome of detachment. The realization that the relationship you have with yourself is the most important one you'll ever have. When you're no longer consumed by the need to fix or hold on to someone else, you have the time and energy to explore who you are. What brings you joy? What are your values? What kind of life do you want to create? These are questions that can only be answered when you stop looking outward for fulfillment and start looking inward. This self-exploration is the foundation of a life that feels rich and meaningful, independent of anyone else. It's worth noting that detachment doesn't mean you won't feel pain. Letting go of someone you care about is inherently difficult, and it's natural to grieve the loss of the connection as you knew it. But pain doesn't have to be something you fear or avoid. It's a sign that you care deeply, that you were invested in, that you allowed yourself to be vulnerable. These are not weaknesses, they're strengths. Rachel. And as you move through the pain, you'll find that it begins to soften, leaving behind a sense of gratitude for what was and hope for what's to come. As you continue to detach, you may notice that your perspective on relationships begins to shift. Instead of seeing them as sources of validation or security, you start to view them as opportunities for mutual growth and connection. This shift allows you to engage with others in a way that feels more authentic and less burdened by expectations. You're no longer seeking someone to complete you. You're seeking someone to complement you, to walk alongside you as you both navigate your individual journeys. Detachment also fosters a sense of humility. It reminds you that everyone is on their own path with their own struggles, lessons, and timing. Just as you're doing the best you can with what you know, so are they. This understanding allows you to release resentment, forgive where it's needed, and approach others with compassion rather than judgment. It's a mindset that doesn't just transform your relationships, but your entire approach to life. The practice of detachment is ultimately an act of self-love. It's a way of saying to yourself, I am worthy of peace, joy, and fulfillment, and I will not compromise those things for anyone or anything. It's a declaration that your well-being matters, that your boundaries matter, and that you are capable of creating a life that reflects your true self. And while the journey may be challenging, it's also deeply empowering. As you reflect on the process of detachment, you'll likely find that it's less about the other person and more about you. It's about reclaiming your power, rediscovering your worth, and realigning with your values. It's about stepping into the fullest version of yourself and recognizing that you are enough just as you are. And as you embrace this truth, you'll find that detachment isn't an act of loss, it's an act of liberation. And in conclusion, emotional detachment is a transformative process that requires patience, self-awareness, and a deep commitment to honoring your own well-being. It is not about shutting down or becoming indifferent, but rather about recognizing that your happiness and sense of fulfillment cannot be dependent on anyone else. Detaching emotionally allows you to reclaim your power, prioritize your growth, and engage in relationships from a place of strength and clarity. It teaches you to respect your boundaries, let go of illusions, and make decisions that align with your authentic self. While it may involve difficult moments of grief, pain, and letting go, the reward is a life of greater freedom, peace, and emotional resilience. Ultimately, emotional detachment is an act of profound self-love and an invitation to create a future where your happiness is anchored in who you are, not in the presence or absence of others. Through this practice, you unlock the potential to build a life of fulfillment, grounded in the understanding that you are enough, and your worth is intrinsic to who you are, not defined by external connections.